Hey, book lovers. Want to hear a story? Welcome back to Storytime with Em. This is my mini episode from Em's Books and Cats podcast, where I am sharing my book Feelers, a chapter or two a week. Please remember that you can either continue to follow along week by week, or if you want to read ahead, there is a link to purchase either the ebook or the paperback in the show notes. And now, Chapter 7. The tables and easels have been rearranged. My table was separated from everyone else. They kept their eyes on their work as I passed. Even when I pulled out my chair with a cringeworthy screech, no one flinched. I was invisible. I picked up a blue pencil and tapped it against the page. The pure white paper mocked me. I put the tip of the pencil to the paper and waited. Nothing. The door opened and everyone looked up in surprise. Neil shuffled into the room with a bandage wrapped haphazardly around his head. He paused and looked around, taking in the new layout of the room. His look lingered on me. He gave me a small smirk and crossed the room to an empty easel. He dragged it closer to my table and began drawing without another glance in my direction. Everyone else went back to their work. I couldn't stop staring at him. Without looking at me and barely moving his lips, Neil spoke quietly. Still, everyone heard him. Don't let them break you. I've got a plan. His words sent a shockwave through the room. Everyone felt it. My hand trembled and the pencil made a wiggly line across the page and off onto the table. I made myself look away and stared at the paper. I moved my pencil slowly, trying to ignore the churning, nervous excitement in my belly. A plan. Could we actually escape? My pencil looped and swirled around the page. Nonsense. I couldn't find my groove. I filled the page with blue, then switched to a bright pink. It didn't mean anything. There was a strange smell in the room. It was faint at first, but it was getting stronger. It wasn't unpleasant, just strange. The room took on a hazy, pink hue. Everyone had noticed it by now. They looked around the room. No one looked at me, though, except Neil. When I finally turned my head, he was staring at me. His eyes were wide with fear. "Gas," he said, and he collapsed. The boy with the glasses dropped next. I jumped to my feet as the door opened, and Cal stood framed in the doorway. Then I fell into the darkness. When I woke up, I was back in my room. The golden ball was barely there, and the room was dimly lit. I sat up too fast, and a circle of pain exploded around my head. I grabbed my temples and leaned over, resting my forehead on my knees. The pain slowly subsided to a dull throbbing. I lifted my head and looked around the room. Everything was the same as before. I stretched my arms overhead, and my back made a series of popping sounds. My body ached. I swung my legs over the side of the bed and stood up shakily. My feet felt like I was standing on a bed of nails. How long had I been lying there? I didn't have much time to ponder this. The door opened moments later, and Cal entered the room. He looked the same as the last time I'd seen him, standing in the doorway of the art therapy room as it filled with gas. He wore the same stern expression, the same white lab coat. The woman in white was with him. She was holding her tablet and tapping intently at the screen. Her smile looked a little more natural, happier. It made me nervous. "Hello, Jane," Cal said in a low, even voice. "It's time for your examination." He removed a packet from his pocket and unrolled it. Every little black pouch held a different shiny silver tool, each one more terrifying, and all of them sharp. Everything looked really sharp. "Wait, what?" The woman in white slapped me so quickly I didn't have time to react. She hit me hard and I lost balance. I stumbled and landed in a heap at Cal's feet. He looked at me with a passive, blank expression on his face. He hadn't made any move to steady me. His hands remained on his tablet. "Get up, Jane," the woman in white said in her bland, professional tone. "It's time for your examination." Her face was expressionless, except for her eyes. There was rage there. The slap was proof of that. Someone wasn't taking enough Hyptiz. The door opened and 2 goggled attendants came in wheeling a stretcher between them. No. I didn't mean to speak. It came out involuntarily when I saw the thick leather straps dangling from the sides of the bed. The woman in white kicked me this time. Hard. My ribs made a sickening cracking sound, and the pain was blinding as she yanked me to my feet. Yes, Jane. She pushed me to the attendants. Here, strap her down. Double dose. Cal's eyebrows went up. Double. The woman in white leveled her cold gaze on Cal, and he stepped back, relenting. I think Jane can handle it. Her smirk, the real smile, returned to her face. The attendant's fingers dug into my arms as they put a needle in the soft flesh and pushed the plunger. Whatever they injected me with burned as it entered, and the pain spread to my whole body. The attendants lifted me onto the stretcher. I wanted to fight them. I tried to fight, but my body would not respond. I was awake. I could feel everything they did, but I had no control. Panic seeped in. My heart pounded in my ears and my chest was painful and tight, but I couldn't speak. I couldn't do anything to stop them. The woman in white stood over me and smiled. Cal appeared on the other side. His face was neutral, but his eyes and a small twitch at the corner of his mouth gave him away. Concern? Was no one at Silent Trees on Hyptiz? The first cut registered slowly. The pain grew unbearable. The woman in white made slow cuts along my legs, inside to outside. Each one was a searing stripe of pain. She worked her way down one leg and was starting on the bottom of my foot when I passed out. I woke to a strange sound. Laughter. The woman in white was laughing wildly. Her face when she leaned over me was red and sweaty. Loose strands of hair clung to her forehead, and her eyes were wild, unhinged. Cal watched her with an expression of fear and forced calm. He switched from one to the other rapidly. His face was pale and tinged with green. He glanced in my direction. Our eyes met and he turned away. He turned on his tablet and tapped a series of buttons. He did not look at me again. The second foot sent me back into blissful unconsciousness. When I woke, the attendants were washing me with a soothing liquid that smelled sweet and mildly antiseptic. The woman in white and Cal were gone. And that is the end of the chapter. I hope you are still enjoying Storytime with M, and I will be back next week with another chapter. And don't forget to check out the regular episode of M's Books and Cats podcast every Thursday. Thank you so much for listening to Storytime with M, and until next time, keep reading.